Zohran Mamdani had an interview recently with Al Sharpton on MSNBC. And I gotta be honest, some of the things that were said are giving people pause. Let's start with some of the positives. We're going to start with the economic discussion that he had with Al Sharpton. And I do want to remind you again, if you don't know who Al Sharpton is, you got to understand again, he is also a puppet for the establishment. Yeah, Al Sharpton has done some good things in the day in regards to like civil rights and all those types of things. But at the end of the day, he decided to put the activism aside and he decided to take like this corporate job and blend in with the establishment. Now, every now and then you'll still see him out there marching in the streets, but he made a decision that he was going to go along with the corporations and the establishment. It's important that you understand that when you watch this interview. So let's go ahead and get into the economic part. Again, Zohran Mamdani is running for mayor of New York City right now. He is leading the way. I don't think that's at the timestamp. 1 second. Right now, he is leading the race, excuse me. And if the election were today, he would definitely win. So that's kind of where Zohran is right now. So let's start with the economic part of this conversation. I think we're right about here. Just want to double check that timestamp. 53. Okay. Yeah, I think I want you guys to hear this first. Again, knowing what I told you about Al Sharpton, just remember he is a part of the establishment. So let's start with the economy, and then we're going to get to the part of the conversation that is making everybody, a lot of people that support him, upset.
Freeze, you mentioned free buses, city-owned groceries that made you popular with some working New Yorkers, but not so popular with real estate developers and the financial class. You were the only mayoral candidate to march alongside Martin Luther King III and I on our march on Wall Street about DEI on last week as we call for economic justice for all New Yorkers and all Americans. But right now, the top...
Pause. I just have to say this. Martin Luther King III is nothing like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. aligned a little bit more with socialism, was not also just focused on integration, but also was focused on class, which he started to talk about before he was assassinated. But Martin Luther King III here, very corporatist, very much establishment. I just have to put that out there. Let's continue.
1% earners in the city pay 40% of the city's income taxes, according to the Empire Center for Public Policy. How do you bring these wealthy residents to the table as mayor? Stop them from saying they're leaving, going to Florida, because we need that tax revenue to pay for some of the things you're talking about. How do you...
Pause. Here's the first problem, right? So here's the thing. People use that threat here in Massachusetts. They said that if you guys pass the millionaire tax, all the millionaires are going to leave. They didn't. They didn't. But two, he said, what's stopping them from going to Florida? What's stopping people that live in New York that are not millionaires from moving to Florida? Hell, New Yorkers been moving to Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia for years. I know. I went to high school in North Carolina. So I saw this happen a lot, where a lot of the people that I would meet, they were from New York, New Jersey, like Massachusetts. So, and they weren't millionaires. So it's just like, this brings up another issue where you are relying on, he's like, well, we need that tax revenue from them. Why do you need that tax revenue? You need it because the way the system is designed, the way that it is set up. This is another reason why I continue to push for a public bank. We need a public bank in every state. It can't just be North Dakota. That's one thing. But two, of all the money that is produced in New York City, there really is no reason why people should have to struggle in New York, but they do. It has become a place for the rich. I know, because I'm right outside of Boston. Boston has also become that as well. It is a trend, right? But this idea that how are you going to win over the wealthy people because, oh God, we don't want to lose them. Man, let them leave. What is this? You know, I don't see this argument with how are you going to, hold on to the poor people because they're being evicted and we don't want to lose them. No, it's just all about we need the wealthy people to stay. So again, Al Sharpton is showing you exactly who he works for.
You pay for it if they're gone.
Well, the first thing I have to say is I was proud to be the only candidate for mayor at that march. And I was proud because some of the chants at that march, they were asking, is the dream alive?
Right.
Is Dr. King's dream still alive? And he asked the question decades ago, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger?
Right.
That's a question that New Yorkers are still wrestling with today in 2025. And so what I have put forward is a vision to make the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable. At a time when we have the wealthiest city, it is also one where 1 in 4 are living in poverty. And to your point, we have a number of New Yorkers who are doing quite well. The top 1% of New York City earns $1 million or more a year. And my vision is not one where they leave, it is one where they stay. It is
How do you get them to stay?
In part by showing them that asking them to pay more in taxes would increase even their quality of life. Because when you ask New Yorkers, what is it that is making them feel uneasy in this city? You often hear from them about the cleanliness of our city, the safety of our city, the affordability of our city. We are not asking to raise these taxes for the sake of it. We're asking so that we can actually make the slowest buses in the country fast and free, so that we can actually create a department of community safety that would deploy dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers to the top 100 stations of the highest levels of mental health crises and homelessness. That relationship proving that tax dollar leads to that investment, because we know that it's not just a fiscal policy that takes somebody from New York City to somewhere else. Because a lot of New Yorkers, if they leave, they go to California, another high tax state. They go to New Jersey, another high tax state. Many people say they might go to Florida, but I have seen and heard from many New Yorkers concern about this new elimination of vaccine mandates in Florida that makes them question whether they would ever want to live there.
Yeah. So you would raise the taxes, but
Let me pause right here for just a second. The framing of this entire discussion is incredibly wrong. Why is there a focus on maintaining wealthy New Yorkers instead of trying to maintain the people who were born and raised in New York, that are working class, that are down and out, that are working 2 jobs? When I lived in New York, I didn't know anyone that had 1 job, including me. I didn't know anyone that had 1 job. And that was years ago. How do you think it is today? Why isn't the conversation around how do we continue to keep people in New York who grew up here, who were raised here, from leaving New York and moving down south because they just can't afford to actually have a quality of life here? It was really weird to me that Al Sharpton framed this in such a way is that we have to worry about the quality of life of the wealthy. No, we don't. They have the quality of life that most of us will never, ever, ever have. So why are we focused on that? But that's who he works for. Al Sharpton is one of those people, and unfortunately, they tend to target activists for this. Al Sharpton is one of those people that was an activist who apparently at some point was targeted by corporations, the Fed at one point. Al Sharpton at one point was a snitch, an informant, and decided to ditch the activism and put on a suit and blend in with the establishment. Every now and then they'll allow them to talk about a couple of, righteous activist things, but for the most part, they are going to defend the capitalists. They're going to defend the wealthy to make sure that they still have their foot where they want it to be. The same thing happened to Van Jones. Van Jones was an activist. He was another one that decided to ditch the activism and put on a suit and blend in with the establishment. So the whole framing around this from Al Sharpton on MSNBC is incredibly wrong. Let's continue on a little bit more here, and then we'll get to the part that is really pissing people off.
You are telling them why raise the taxes for the rich.
For the top 1%, we raise their personal income tax by 2%. So that would be, if you make $1 million a year, $20,000 extra in taxes. And the point and my responsibility would be to deliver on that, to show them that it is a worthwhile investment.
We've heard rumblings in the recent.
Show them it's a worthwhile investment. Again, it's like Zohran Mamdani won the primary without having to please these billionaire people. And when we get to this next part here, I just want to remind you that Zohran Mamdani also won Hakeem Jeffrey's district. And that's important when we get to this part here about this global intifada. It is absolutely ridiculous. Let me get this here. Okay, listen to what Al Sharpton says here.
New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize, the intifada, has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter. The Department of Defense means something different than the Department of War. I've experienced this throughout my own civil rights career, and I've had to correct myself to deal with what people receive may not be what I meant. And words have consequences, and sometimes we need to examine our own positions to build unity. Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than?
Pause. Here's the problem, folks. Al Sharpton is choosing to focus on a phrase, words, instead of focusing on action. Right now, you have a genocide taking place in Gaza. Don't want to deal with Gaza? Put that aside for a second. Let's talk about the West Bank. You have Israeli settlers beating, burning, killing Palestinians for their homes, taking their homes. And on top of that, you have multiple videos on social media, which I know Al Sharpton has seen, multiple videos on social media of Israelis and Zionists and settlers in the West Bank bragging about it. Al Sharpton says that words matter. Where was this words matter from Al Sharpton when Zionists in Brooklyn were chasing the pro-Palestinian protesters down the street? A woman, which we showed that one on this show, chasing a woman down the street, threatening to beat her, sexually assault her. Where was the words matter from Al Sharpton then? Where were the words matter? And see, this is the point that I try to bring up. There is a protected group. And Al Sharpton, as a Black commentator, someone who was a part of, some champion for civil rights or whatever, he is choosing to focus on a phrase instead of focusing on actual action. Where was Al Sharpton when the Zionists chased that woman down the street who they assumed was a pro-Palestinian protester, and she was not, and they beat that woman? Where was Al Sharpton? Where was the words matter then? Where was it? Where were the words and actions? We didn't get to actions part. Where the words and actions matter when the Zionists were spitting on pro-Palestinian protesters? Where was all this matters then? Why is Al Sharpton choosing to focus on a phrase instead of focusing on actions? And why are you focusing on a phrase for a select group of people? That's the first part. If I was Zohran Mamdani sitting in that seat, I would have asked that question. Why are you focusing on a phrase instead of focusing on the actions that are happening right now to the Palestinian people and to pro-Palestinian protesters right here in New York City? That would have been my response. But that's not what Zohran Mamdani said. Here's what he said, and this is what is giving people pause.
Saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language.
Yes, they have. And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints, because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home.
Pause. Before he even finishes, he hasn't gotten to the other part yet. One of the things I noticed that Zohran Mamdani did here is he mentioned complexities. That is a Zionist talking point when you're talking about this particular issue. To say it's complex. That's what they all say. It's not complex. And what I have started to notice, and you may be noticing this as well, it seems like to me, the moment Bernie Sanders got a hold of Zohran Mamdani and told him to tone down the Israel rhetoric, it seems like his words have started to change. Now wait for it.
And in the meetings that I have had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders. And there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me, that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And
so we're talking about a fear that someone has by a phrase that is being used, but no action has been committed against you. But you have actions that have been committed against Palestinians, not just in Middle East, actually here in the United States as well. What about the 3 Palestinian American college students at the University of Vermont that were shot at? You see, there's a difference between a phrase, which, by the way, I don't believe that phrase means what they say it means. I've told you guys this before. Like, they can say from the river to the sea, but you're not supposed to say from the river to the sea. But where was that same type of outrage when a man shot at 3 University of Vermont Palestinian American college students just for walking down the street? They weren't a part of a protest, and even if they were, so what? That was an action. So we are seriously talking about a phrase that is being used, and I feel afraid, but nothing has happened to you. But because you have that fear, which I don't even believe that's real. I don't believe this fear is real. But you say you have this fear because of words that have been said. Okay. What if every time, and for people in the chat, listen up, buckle up. What if every time, as a Black person, every time someone calls me the N-word, or let's go with someone older. Let's say it for an older Black person, someone who's Gen X, someone who's a boomer. What if they said every time someone called them the N-word, they feel afraid and feel fearful? What are you going to do about that, politician? What if they said that? What if Black people said, every time you call me the N-word, I get fear. I'm shaken up about, my great grandparents being lynched or the crosses that were burned in our yard. What if that happened? Do you really think any of these politicians, any of these candidates would go to such extremes, to these lengths, to say, we got to do everything that we can to protect the Black community? Hell to the no. Everybody needs to pay attention to what is happening here. I have warned you about this before. You have a white minority that has somehow, in some way, shape, or form, managed to make itself the priority over. You have people in this country, marginalized people in this country, that literally have every type of systemic obstacle against us as you can think of. But yet somehow a white minority has made themselves the priority. Pay attention, folks. So this candidate, Zohran Mamdani, he's expected to change the way he's running his campaign and what he said about the pro-Palestinian movement. He's expected to change that because people have hurt feelings. But but nobody else is expected to change their campaign for the harms that were done in the past and continue to happen today to the Black community. Sit on that for a minute. For the indigenous community, the missing indigenous women that are nowhere to be found. Let that marinate. And then what makes it worse is they get a Black commentator to do it for you. They get Al Sharpton. They get him to do the work, the bidding of it. Wait till you hear what he says.
So in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi. So I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
Now,
Everybody heard what he said? This part one more time. One more time. This is very important.
Community leaders. And there was one rabbi that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back memories of bus bombings in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I have heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact it was having in that same conversation I was having with that rabbi. So I have said, after having that conversation, that this is language I would discourage.
That changed quickly. The impact that the language has, people who have no power having that type of an impact, let's put that all together. Zohran Mamdani is now backtracking on what he said about protesters being able to use that phrase. He is now going back. And I find it interesting that this is happening after he had this sit down, this conversation with Bernie Sanders, where Bernie told him to tone it down on Israel. This is what I'm going to say. I get it. I think some people want to support him based on the economic issues, but for the people who really rallied behind him also because of his pro-Palestinian stance, and now he's backtracking on this. He also backtracked on defund the police, etc. It is very clear that he is trying to fit in more with the largest part of the Democratic Party, which is the Democrat establishment. And he hasn't even won yet. He's probably going to win based on the numbers, but he hasn't even won yet. So my thing is, he's already showing you that he's willing to backtrack. He's willing to water down his campaign a little bit. He's already showing you. With the others, we had to wait until they were elected to see it. Like AOC talked a lot of good game, and then she got in there and we were like, yeah, she's out there protesting at Nancy Pelosi's office. That's what we're talking about. And then she had a talking to, and that was gone. And we see how she's turned out. So my point is, he's already showing you now and he hasn't even won. So you have to hold politicians accountable. And I get it. Your choices are Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and the Silva guy. I get it. Right? You guys are like, who else are we supposed to support? I get it. All I'm saying is hold him accountable. Hold him accountable now. If you have Zohran Mamdani's ear right now, if you've been able to talk to him in person, if you've been able to sit down and meet with him, hold him accountable on this now. Because I'm here to tell you, once they get in, that's it. And some people are already holding him accountable. Let's look at Muhammad here. Muhammad, he said, Zohran Mamdani, I have told you this on the phone, in person, and I will reiterate it publicly. What you think the phrase globalize the intifada, our beautiful uprising against occupation, is irrelevant. What matters is that it's a slogan adopted by a movement that is partly responsible for your success, and you mustn't throw them under the bus. We are facing unprecedented levels of state repression and institutional censorship. Both our political organizing and speech are criminalized, and we are confronting genocide for God's sake. We are confronting genocide for God's sake. That you choose to continue elevating Jewish feelings over the lives of Palestinians over the fact of genocide is nothing more than punching down on those who have helped elevate you. And not to mention, it's a bad electoral strategy considering you are quite literally winning and need not to bow down to Zionist pressure. The tens of thousands of volunteers who have canvassed for you in the scorching hot sun, they are not to be taken for granted. Their support isn't unconditional. Remember that. That is coming from Muhammad here. I just want to reiterate again, Zohran Mamdani won Hakeem Jeffrey's district. Zohran Mamdani is leading in particular with the youth vote, the younger voters in New York City, and also young Jewish voters heavily are supporting Zohran Mamdani. The point is, he doesn't need to change his rhetoric. He can still win. He's still well ahead of Andrew Cuomo. This is the Democrat establishment getting to Zohran Mamdani. That's what this is. Everybody plays the fool. It's like, to me, this makes absolutely no sense. You are well ahead. You won Hakeem's district. You're able to connect with a lot of the Jewish voters who really are supporting you in the primary and still supporting you now. There was no reason for Zohran Mamdani to change course. So that tells me that he is giving into the pressure from Dem leadership. That's what this is about. So Muhammad is holding him accountable. Bree chimed in here. AOC charted a path for progressives run and win because of lefty enthusiasm. Become embraced by the mainstream when they fall in love with your identity/youth. Abandon the left without consequence because now you have liberals to support you. I hope Zohran doesn't take that route. And Bree interviewed Zohran Mamdani. In fact, she interviewed him before I think a lot of people even knew who he was. That's before he was polling as high as he is now. So it's just, I'm telling you, man. And even Blakely, who was pretty excited about Zohran, she had some things to say too. She wasn't happy about what he said.
Let's talk about this embarrassing fucking cringe struggle session that Zohran Mamdani had with Reverend Al Sharpton. Before we get to this cringe bullshit clip in which Reverend Al Sharpton takes like a fucking minute and a half to set up this struggle session, let me address Zohran, okay? In case you just happen to see this, Zohran Mamdani. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? Do you think we're stupid? Do you think we're stupid? First of all, there are more than just Jewish New Yorkers that live here, okay? I and others have given you a lot of grace because we know that these people are deranged and they've been witch hunting you about this for fucking months. But my patience is fixing to run out, especially since we already have a bunch of deranged Zionists running in this race in Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo. We don't need you to repeat their fucking bullshit propaganda. You partially won because people like that you didn't capitulate to their bullying. But it looks like you are now. This fucking bullshit answer sounded like a scumbag politician. Sounds to me like you're throwing Palestinians under the fucking bus and those of us who want to free Palestine. This is ridiculous. Either you've already sold out and you haven't even won yet, or you're allowing them to bully you into saying this. Either way, it's not a good fucking look.
Blakely, she has very raw energy, right? Her energy came out. Let's fast forward because that's showing you the part that I just showed. Here we go.
Anti-Semitism is the only thing they want to talk about.
New York City is the home of the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. The mayor must build a relationship, whoever the mayor becomes, trust in all communities of the city. The term globalize, the intifada, has become a flashpoint for Jewish New Yorkers who say they're concerned about how your views on the Israeli-Gaza conflict will influence how you govern the city. You said on Meet the Press in July, that's not language you would use, but you don't want to police the speech of others. But we both know words matter.
Sorry, I'm just fast forwarding.
Which because of its impact?
Has your personal views on the phrase of global intifada changed since you've been running for mayor? Do you understand those that see it in a more threatening way than saying, I'm just not going to police other people's language?
This is so embarrassing.
And you know, when we won the primary election, I said on that stage that I know that millions of New Yorkers care deeply about what happens in Israel and Palestine, and I'm one of those New Yorkers. And I commit to reaching even further to understand disagreement, to wrestle with the complexities of those differing viewpoints. Because what this city deserves is a mayor that looks not only to represent the close to 600,000 New Yorkers that voted for me, but rather the 8.5 million people that call this city home. And in the meetings that I've had since that moment, I've met with Jewish elected officials, with rabbis, with community leaders.
Are we
and there was
talk
one
about
rabbi
them?
that spoke to me about how that phrase for her brought back
Or are we
memories
just
of
gonna
bus
keep
bombings in
censoring
Haifa,
Jewish
restaurant attacks in
feelings?
Jerusalem. And I knew that from what she was sharing with me that she had a fear, as she said, that could come home to New York City. And so in having that conversation with her, I knew that the gap between the intent that I've heard some New Yorkers share with the use of that language of calling for the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land was disconnected from the impact.
Should answer. Did you just meet with J Street? Is that what the fuck this is? For these liberal fucking Zionist talking points? What about what Palestinians think? Did you consult with them? Did you ask them how it made them feel? Have you thought about taking a break from your Zionist talking point tour and listening to how the Palestinians feel about the phrase? How fucking stupid do you think we are? How fucking stupid. Also, the complexities, you're really doing the complexity bullshit right now. What a fucking cop-out. Except it's not complex. And you know it's not complex. So there's only two reasons why you'd be doing this. Either one, you're selling out like all lawmakers before you so that you can appease the Zionists and get power. Or you're afraid and they're intimidating you and you're allowing them to cow you. Regardless of what the reason is, you don't look like a leader. Leaders don't do this shit. And if you're not ready to take the hate that you had to have known was coming and the crazy opposition that you knew you were going to face from big corporations, the billionaires and the Zionists, then why should I or any other New Yorker have any fucking confidence that you're going to stand up for our interests? And you know what? For the most part, I've been putting the blame on the politicians and the media because they are the ones that are not letting this die. At one point, Al Sharpton's like, people are very concerned about it. It's become a thing. No, they're not. People aren't concerned about it. It's you ghouls in the media and our political class. So mostly I've been putting on that. But you know what? Your answer is fucking bullshit. It's bullshit and you fucking know it's bullshit and it's utterly unacceptable. Unacceptable. If you think that you're going to start doing this fucking J Street style liberal Zionist fucking horseshit in which we censor Jewish feelings all the time. Because we're not having any conversations about censoring Muslim and Arab feelings, despite the fact that hate crimes are up against them. But instead of standing by what the fuck you originally said and all of us had your back, you decided you were going to do this shit. And no, I won't be letting this go because even though as a New Yorker, my focus is on the fact that I can't afford fucking food or rent. And I would like for that to be the main focus. But you know what? Your answer in this kind of fucking capitulation tells me what the fuck type of time you're on. Are you going to meet with Palestinian Arabs and how they feel? Because you keep talking about how you're meeting with rabbis and talking about how it feels for them and how it makes them feel. I haven't heard you say anything recently about meeting with Muslims and Arabs and how they feel about that saying. Where you be? And who is this for? Because no matter how much you try to fucking capitulate to them, it's never going to be enough. They're always going to hate you. They're going to try to destroy you no matter what. So maybe you should focus on the people that fucking brought you to the dance.
I think, we haven't done it in a while, but I think we may have to drop the beat for Blakely. Dropping the beats. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat. In the street. I know we haven't done that in a while, but I had to do it because Blakely, oh my God, she's a Mamdani supporter, I'm pretty sure she's probably still going to support Zohran Mamdani regardless because she supports the economic policies. And like I said, I told you who the choices are. But I think this is holding politicians accountable, right? Like holding them accountable before they, get into office. And I just think that Zohran Mamdani had, I guess, a oiled like campaign where a lot of people came out for him. And he doesn't need to change. He doesn't need to change the rhetoric. There was no need for him to do that. And to me, it just goes to show you again, Democrat establishment, they got to him. Yay. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.